I never thought I'd see that face again, the face that destroyed me 4 years ago and left me picking up pieces I wasn't sure would ever fit back together. But today, as I walked into my husband Damien's company anniversary gala with my hand tucked into his arm, I stood frozen in front of the man who broke my heart on graduation day. Sawyer. He was standing right there near the champagne fountain in a navy blue suit that fit him too well, his messy brown hair still falling over his forehead the same way it used to when he'd leaned down to kiss me. Those green eyes that once held my entire world now stared back at me with shock, confusion, and something that looked painfully like regret. But right now, he was just an employee waiting to greet his CEO and his CEO's husband. Nothing more. Damien squeezed my hand gently and smiled at Sawyer with professional warmth. "Callum, I'd like you to meet my new project lead, Sawyer Brooks. He joined us about 3 weeks ago and has already impressed the entire team with his strategic planning skills." My heart stopped beating for a full second. The room spun slightly, the crystal chandeliers above blurring into streams of light. Sawyer's eyes locked onto mine, wide with recognition, then immediately filled with guilt so thick I could practically taste it in the air between us. I forced my lips into a smile, perfect, polite, and cold enough to freeze hell over. "Nice to meet you, Sawyer." My voice came out steady even though my pulse was racing like I'd just run a marathon. I extended my hand for a formal shake, maintaining just enough distance to make it clear this was business, not personal. Sawyer's hand trembled slightly as he shook mine, his grip lingering a fraction too long. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, maybe apologize or explain. But I turned my attention back to Damien before any words could escape. I wasn't interested in his excuses, not now, not after 4 years of learning to live without him. I was here as the CEO's husband, the man who built a life after heartbreak, not as the broken college boy who used to cry into his pillow at night wondering why he wasn't enough. Throughout the evening I felt his gaze burning into me from across the room. Every time I laughed at something Damien whispered in my ear, every time I touched my husband's arm or leaned into him during conversations with board members, I could see Sawyer's expression darken from my peripheral vision. Good. I wanted him to see exactly what he'd given up. I wanted him to understand that I'd moved forward, built something beautiful, found someone who actually knew how to stay. The gala was magnificent. Ice sculptures, a live orchestra playing soft jazz, tables decorated with white roses and gold accents. Damien introduced me to various executives and investors, his hand never leaving the small of my back, a constant reminder that I belonged here, that I was valued. Several people complimented us as a couple, calling us inspiring and mentioning how rare it was to see such genuine affection in their social circles. Each compliment felt like armor, protecting me from the memories threatening to surface every time Sawyer moved within my line of sight. When dinner was served, we were seated at the head table, and unfortunately Sawyer was placed just 3 tables away with the senior project managers. I could feel his eyes on me as I cut into my salmon, as I sipped wine, as I leaned over to whisper something that made Damien laugh. The tension was suffocating, like trying to breathe underwater. My chest felt tight, but I kept my composure flawless. Years of healing had taught me how to wear strength like a second skin. As the night drew to a close and guests began filtering toward the exit, Damien excused himself to take an urgent call from a client in Tokyo. He kissed my temple and stepped toward the balcony, phone already pressed to his ear. That's when Sawyer made his move. He appeared in front of me so suddenly I almost dropped my clutch, blocking my path to where Damien stood. "Callum, please, just 1 minute." His voice shook, cracking on my name like he'd been holding it in all evening. His eyes were desperate, searching my face for something I wasn't willing to give. I looked toward Damien, who was still occupied on his call, gesturing with his free hand as he spoke rapid business Japanese. Then I turned back to Sawyer, keeping my expression completely neutral, blank as fresh paper. "What do you want?" His breathing was uneven, ragged. "I didn't know. Seeing you here tonight, I had no idea you were. I never expected this." He gestured vaguely around us, at the opulence, at my expensive suit, at the wedding ring, glinting on my finger. I let out a laugh, but it was hollow and sharp as broken glass. "What exactly were you expecting, Sawyer? That I'd fall apart after you rejected me? that my life would just stop because you decided you needed space. I took a step closer, dropping my voice to something low and cutting. I moved on. I built a life. I found love with someone who actually knows what commitment means, and you should do the same. Pain flashed across his face, raw and unfiltered, but he tried to hide it behind a weak attempt at composure. I started to turn away, ready to leave this conversation and this chapter of my past behind. But his next words stopped me cold. I still love you. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment the entire ballroom seemed to disappear, leaving just the two of us suspended in this impossible moment. I turned back slowly, and this time my eyes weren't neutral anymore. They were blazing with 4 years of hurt, anger, and grief. You remember love now. When I was with you begging you to just talk to me about our future, you suddenly needed space. You weren't ready for anything serious. My voice rose slightly despite my efforts to control it. And now when I'm married to someone else, when I've finally found peace, you decide you're ready? I shook my head, feeling something crack inside my chest. Your love doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Not after what you did. Not after you walked away when I needed you most. Sawyer looked like I'd physically struck him. His shoulders sagged, his face crumpled, and for a second I saw the boy I used to know, vulnerable and afraid. But I couldn't let that soften me. I'd worked too hard to heal these wounds to let him rip them open again, with pretty words and convenient timing. Damien's voice called out from behind me. Ready to go, love? I didn't answer Sawyer. I simply walked past him toward my husband, slipping my hand into Damien's and letting him guide me toward the exit. I didn't look back, even though I could feel Sawyer's eyes following us all the way to the car. As we drove home through the city lights, Damien asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, just tired from the evening. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either, because seeing Sawyer again had stirred up feelings I thought I'd buried forever, and I wasn't sure what would happen next. Having Sawyer exist in the same building as me was slowly driving me insane, like a constant itch I couldn't scratch no matter how hard I tried. Damien had explained to me over breakfast one morning that Sawyer was genuinely talented, that his portfolio spoke for itself, that he'd brought fresh, innovative ideas to projects that had been stagnating for months. The decision to make him project lead was purely merit-based, Damien assured me while pouring my coffee exactly how I liked it. 2 creams, no sugar. I couldn't say anything without revealing our history, without admitting that the man my husband praised professionally was the same person who'd shattered my heart into fragments so small I'd spent years finding them all. So I said nothing. I smiled, kissed Damien goodbye, and tried to pretend everything was normal. But every time I visited the office for lunch dates or meetings where Damien wanted my input on design aesthetics, I'd worked as a creative consultant before we got married. Sawyer was there, always there. His eyes would find me across conference rooms, in hallways, through glass office walls. It was like being haunted by a ghost who refused to stay dead. Today I'd decided to implement a new strategy: complete and total avoidance. I wouldn't acknowledge him, wouldn't make eye contact, wouldn't give him even a shred of attention. I was sitting in Damien's office waiting area, scrolling through my phone while sipping an espresso his assistant had kindly brought me, when the door opened and Sawyer walked in carrying a stack of presentation folders. He saw me and froze mid-step. "Callum, you're here?" I set down my phone deliberately slowly, looking up at him with the same expression I'd use for a stranger. "Waiting for Damien. He's finishing a video conference." My tone was flat, completely devoid of emotion. Sawyer moved closer, hesitant, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. His hands fidgeted with the folders. "Can we talk? Please, just for a few minutes. I need to explain." "No." I stood up smoothly, grabbing my jacket from the chair beside me. I moved toward the door, fully intending to wait in the hallway instead, but Sawyer's hand shot out and caught my wrist. The touch sent electricity through my skin. Unwanted, unwelcome, and entirely too familiar. I jerked my hand away like I'd been burned. "Don't touch me." His eyes immediately filled with tears he was trying desperately to hold back. "Callum, please listen. You have to understand what happened back then. On graduation day, I was terrified. Everything was moving so fast. We were graduating. You were talking about moving in together, about meeting each other's families during the holidays. I panicked because I loved you so much it scared me senseless. I stared at him, feeling anger bubble up from somewhere deep in my chest. You were scared? So your solution was to hurt me, to abandon me right when I was most vulnerable, right after we'd just celebrated finishing 4 years of college together. My voice cracked despite my best efforts to keep it steady. You knew exactly how much I loved you. You knew I'd have done anything for you. And you threw it all away like it meant nothing. Sawyer's hand started to reach toward me again, but stopped midair, trembling. I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry. But I'm different now. I've grown up, worked on myself, figured out what matters. I'm ready to fight for you. For us. I laughed, but it was bitter and sharp. You think an apology fixes 4 years of damage? You think saying you're ready now somehow erases what you did? I stepped closer to him, my voice dropping to something dangerous. I'm with someone else, Sawyer. I love Damien. He gives me respect, stability, and love without conditions or fear. He stays. That's something you never learned how to do. Sawyer's head dropped, his voice breaking. Does he know about me? About us? I paused. The truth was complicated. Damien knew I'd had a painful relationship in college. Knew someone had hurt me badly enough that it took me 2 years before I could even consider dating again. But I'd never mentioned names, never gone into specific details about who or why or how it all fell apart. He knows I had a toxic relationship. That's all he needs to know. And you don't need to meet him, understand me clearly on that. Sawyer lifted his eyes, and they were filled with desperation so thick it was almost tangible. I'm going to win you back, Callum. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I won't give up. I looked at him with cold finality, my voice low and dangerous. Don't even try. Because you'll lose. You already lost me 4 years ago. You just didn't realize it until now. I walked out of that office without looking back, my hands shaking as I texted Damien that I'd meet him at the restaurant instead. I couldn't stay in that building another second. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating me with memories I'd worked so hard to escape. Later that evening, as I helped Damien prepare dinner in our kitchen, he insisted on making his grandmother's pasta recipe from scratch. I found myself distracted chopping vegetables with less precision than usual. Damien noticed immediately. He always did. You're quiet tonight, he observed, sliding the pasta dough under a cloth to rest. Something on your mind? I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to explain that his brilliant new project lead was my ex-boyfriend, that every visit to his office now felt like walking through a minefield of old emotions. But I also didn't want to burden him with my past, didn't want to create tension in his workplace over something that should have been long dead and buried. Just tired, I said instead, offering him a smile. The gallery opening is next week and I've been stressed about the installations. Damien came around the counter and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. You're an amazing curator, love. The gallery will be spectacular because you're running it. He pressed a kiss to my neck. But if something's bothering you, you know you can tell me anything, right? I leaned back into his warmth, letting it chase away the chill Sawyer's presence had left behind. I know. I promise I'm okay. But as we finished cooking and sat down to eat, laughing over wine and stories about our day, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sawyer wasn't going to disappear quietly. His words echoed in my mind. I'm going to win you back. The determination in his voice had been real unsettling, and I had no idea how to handle what was coming next, or what it might cost me if I wasn't careful. Damien was an incredibly perceptive man, too perceptive for his own good, and definitely too perceptive for me to hide anything from him for long. He'd started noticing the little things. How I'd tense up whenever Sawyer's name came up in dinner conversation about work. How I'd suddenly need to check my phone or refill my wine glass when Damien mentioned the project lead's latest accomplishment. How my smile would tighten just slightly at the edges whenever we ran into Sawyer during my office visits. For the past 2 weeks I'd felt Damien's careful observation, the way he'd watch me with those intelligent dark eyes, clearly trying to piece together a puzzle I'd been desperately trying to keep hidden. Tonight, as we walked through our front door after another company event where Sawyer had been present, Damien finally asked the question I'd been dreading. We were barely inside, shoes still on, when he turned to face me directly. Callum, what's really going on? His voice was gentle but firm, the same tone he used in boardroom negotiations when he wanted honest answers. I moved toward the kitchen, suddenly parched, reaching for a glass from the cabinet. "What do you mean?" I tried to keep my voice light, casual, but it came out strained even to my own ears. Damien followed me, his presence solid and grounding behind me. He placed his hands on my waist, not restraining but anchoring, and turned me to face him. "You've been different these past few weeks. Every time Sawyer is around, you become someone else, closed off, tense, like you're barely holding yourself together." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Did something happen between you two? Before you knew me?" My heart hammered against my ribcage so hard I was sure he could hear it. I couldn't lie to Damien. He didn't deserve dishonesty, not after everything he'd given me. I'd built our relationship on trust, on the promise that we'd always be honest with each other even when the truth was uncomfortable. I took a shaky breath and met his eyes. "Sawyer is my ex-boyfriend." The words tumbled out before I could second-guess them. "The one who broke my heart in college. The reason I was so hesitant about relationships when we first met." Damien's expression didn't change dramatically, but I saw the slight tightening around his eyes. The way his jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. His hands remained on my waist, grip becoming just a fraction firmer. "Your ex? The one who hurt you so badly you stopped believing in love?" I nodded, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes. "Yes. I never told you his name because I thought I'd moved past it completely. He was supposed to be ancient history, someone I'd never see again. But now he's working for you, and everything's become incredibly complicated." Damien was silent for a long moment, processing. Then he pulled me closer, pressing our foreheads together in that intimate way he did when he needed to feel connected to me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" There was hurt in his voice, subtle but unmistakable. "Because I didn't want this to affect us." My voice broke slightly. "I didn't want my past to create problems in your company or tension between us. Sawyer is nothing to me now, less than nothing. You're my everything, Damien. You're my present and my future. I just didn't know how to handle running into my past like this." Damien pulled back slightly to look directly into my eyes, searching for something. "Does he still have feelings for you? Has he said anything to you?" I hesitated, knowing the truth would hurt him but unable to lie. "He told me he still loves me, that he wants me back. But I made it crystal clear that I'm committed to you, that I love you, that he has no chance whatsoever." The muscles in Damien's jaw worked as he processed this information. He released me and ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of stress. "This explains so much. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. How he always seems to be wherever you are in the building." He turned back to me, and there was steel in his expression now. "If he crosses any line, I'll fire him immediately. I don't care how talented he is or how much he's contributed. You're more important than any project." I reached for his hands, holding them tightly. "Please don't. I don't want you making business decisions based on my personal history. That's not fair to you or your company. I can handle Sawyer. I've already handled him, actually. I've rejected him clearly and completely." Damien pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. And I realized he needed this as much as I did. "You're my priority, Callum. Always. Not the company, not profits, not anyone else. If this situation makes you uncomfortable, we'll deal with it together." That night, lying in bed with Damien's arms wrapped around me, and his steady breathing in my ear, I felt truly safe for the first time since the gala. He knew now. The secret was out, and instead of creating distance between us, it had somehow brought us closer. Damien's acceptance, his immediate instinct to protect me, his trust despite everything, it reminded me exactly why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. But there was still a small voice in the back of my mind whispering doubts. Would Sawyer actually back off now that Damien knew? Or would this revelation somehow make things worse? Would workplace politics get messy? Would my presence at company events become awkward and strained? And most terrifyingly, was there any tiny part of me that still felt something for Sawyer, buried deep beneath all the hurt and anger? I pushed those thoughts away and snuggled deeper into Damien's embrace. He murmured something sleepy and sweet into my hair, tightening his hold. This was real. This was home. Whatever came next with Sawyer, I'd face it with Damien by my side, and that made all the difference. The next morning, Damien woke me with coffee and kissed me longer than usual before leaving for work. "I love you," he said at the door, his eyes serious. "Remember that today, okay?" "I love you too," I replied, meaning every word. After he left, I sat at our kitchen table sipping coffee and staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to reach out to Sawyer directly, to tell him to back off now that Damien knew everything. But another part of me, the part that had spent 4 years healing, knew that any contact with Sawyer would only encourage him. The best thing I could do was continue maintaining distance, being coldly professional when necessary, and trusting that he'd eventually get the message. What I didn't know was that Sawyer had no intention of giving up, and the confrontation coming next would force me to face feelings I wasn't ready to acknowledge. Sawyer crossed every boundary I'd tried to establish when he showed up at my front door unannounced. I was alone. Damien had flown to Singapore for a 3-day business conference, and I'd been enjoying the quiet solitude of our apartment, reading a novel on the couch with jazz playing softly in the background. When the doorbell rang insistently at 8 in the evening, I assumed it was a delivery I'd forgotten about. Instead, when I opened the door, Sawyer stood there completely drenched from the rain, his chest heaving like he'd run the entire way here, water dripping from his hair onto our doormat. "Callum, please. You need to hear me out." His voice was raw, desperate in a way that immediately put me on edge. Shock froze me for a moment before anger took over. "Sawyer, you shouldn't be here. This is my home. Leave. Now." I started to close the door, but he placed his palm flat against it, stopping the motion. "I can't." He stepped forward into the doorway, forcing me to either let him in or physically push him out. "I can't leave until you understand. I love you. I've always loved you, even when I was too afraid to admit it." That day at graduation, I panicked about our future, about the depth of my own feelings. But I'm not that scared boy anymore. I'm ready now, ready to face everything with you, ready to be the partner you deserved back then. I crossed my arms tightly over my chest, feeling anger boil through my veins like acid. "What exactly do you think is going to happen here? You deliver some emotional monologue and I just forget the last 4 years? I'm married, Sawyer. Married. That word means something to me, even if commitment apparently meant nothing to you." His eyes were wild with desperation as he took another step inside, and I found myself backing up involuntarily.
Are you truly happy though?
"Can Damien give you what I couldn't back then? Does he understand you the way I did? The way I still do?" His voice cracked. "Does he know that you drink your morning coffee black because you think adding anything to it ruins the natural flavor? Does he know that when you're upset, you go completely silent instead of talking about it? That you need someone to just sit with you quietly until you're ready?" My heart stuttered in my chest. He remembered all of it, every tiny detail, every quirk, every habit. But memories weren't enough to build a relationship on, especially not when those same memories were wrapped in so much pain. Knowing someone and respecting them are completely different things. "Sawyer, you knew me intimately. Yes. But you didn't respect me enough to stay, to work through your fears instead of running away. Damien does both. He knows me and he values me enough to fight through difficulties, instead of abandoning me when things get scary." Sawyer moved even closer, close enough that I could hear his ragged breathing, could see the rainwater still clinging to his eyelashes. We were standing so near to each other that it felt dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff. "What if I can prove I've changed? What if I can show you that I've become the man worthy of your love?" "No." My answer was immediate and firm. "Because the real growth here isn't about you becoming worthy of me. It's about me becoming worthy of myself. I'm not the weak, heartbroken kid you left behind at graduation. I've built myself into someone strong, someone confident, someone genuinely happy. And I achieved all of that without you. I don't need you to be whole." Tears finally spilled from his eyes, tracking down his already wet face. He looked utterly defeated, broken in a way I'd never seen him before. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "I've lost you completely, haven't I? There's no way back from this." Something in my chest twisted painfully, but I kept my voice steady and gentle. "Yes, you lost me. But you lost me 4 years ago on graduation day. Sawyer, everything since then has just been you slowly realizing what was already gone." He turned toward the door, shoulders sagging with the weight of finality, but paused at the threshold. Rain was still pouring outside, the sound filling the heavy silence between us. If you ever need anything, anything at all, I'll be there. That won't change regardless of whether you want me in your life or not. After he left, I stood motionless in the entryway for what felt like hours, staring at the closed door and the small puddle of rainwater he'd left behind. My chest felt simultaneously tight and strangely clear, like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and could finally exhale. I knew I'd done the right thing by sending him away, by maintaining my boundaries, by choosing my marriage and my happiness over nostalgia and what-ifs. But there was still a small, treacherous part of me whispering questions I didn't want to acknowledge. Had I been too harsh? Was there really no possibility of even friendship after everything? And most dangerously, why did seeing him so broken make me feel both relieved and guilty in equal measure? I cleaned up the water, locked the door securely, and returned to my book. But the words blurred on the page as I kept replaying the confrontation in my mind. Sawyer's desperation had been real, his regret palpable, yet regret didn't erase history, and desperation didn't rebuild trust. I'd meant every word I said to him. I was strong now, happy, complete without him. Damien had taught me what real love looked like, what commitment actually meant when someone was brave enough to honor it. When my phone buzzed with a text from Damien, just a simple "missing you, love. Conference is boring without you to make fun of the presentations with me." I smiled genuinely for the first time since opening the door to Sawyer. This was my reality. This was my life, and I was grateful for it in ways I couldn't fully articulate. I texted back quickly, warmth spreading through my chest as I typed, "Missing you too, counting down until you're home." As I settled back into the couch and finally managed to focus on my novel, I felt the last threads of connection to Sawyer begin to dissolve. Whatever we'd once had, whatever could have been, was truly finished now. I'd said everything that needed saying, drawn every necessary boundary, and closed that chapter of my life with finality. What I didn't know yet was that Sawyer would take my words to heart in ways I never expected, and that this confrontation would become the catalyst for changes neither of us could have predicted. 2 days after Sawyer appeared at my door, Damien came home with unexpected news that sent my mind reeling. "Sawyer submitted his resignation this morning," Damien said casually while unpacking his suitcase, not looking at me as he spoke. But I could hear the careful neutrality in his tone, the way he was trying to gauge my reaction without pressuring me. I sat down heavily on our bed, genuinely shocked. "He resigned? Did he say why?" Damien shrugged, finally meeting my eyes with an expression that was both knowing and cautious. "Officially, he cited personal reasons and the need to explore other opportunities. But between you and me, I suspect this has to do with you. With us." He came to sit beside me, taking my hand gently. "I'm not upset about it, to be clear. If anything, I'm relieved. Having him around was creating tension none of us needed." I stayed quiet, processing this information. Had Sawyer resigned because of our confrontation? Because he'd finally accepted that there was no path forward for us? Or was this some kind of dramatic gesture meant to prove something? I forced myself to stop analyzing his motivations. They weren't my concern anymore. He'd made his choice and I needed to respect it while focusing on my own life. The next afternoon, I went to Damien's office to bring him lunch, homemade sandwiches and his favorite pasta salad. As I walked through the sleek modern corridors toward his corner office, I noticed a small crowd gathered near the project management area. Curiosity pulled me closer, and that's when I saw Sawyer at his desk, methodically packing his belongings into a cardboard box while colleagues said their goodbyes. He was smiling as people wished him well, but even from a distance I could see the forced quality of it, the tightness around his eyes that spoke of barely contained emotion. Someone made a joke about him being too good for their company anyway, and his laugh sounded hollow, mechanical. When his gaze swept across the room and landed on me, he froze for just a moment. Our eyes locked, and in that brief second, I saw everything: acceptance, sadness, resignation, and something that might have been gratitude. Then he picked up his box and walked toward the elevators without another word. I felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over me. Finally, this chapter was truly closing. He was leaving, creating physical distance that would make everything easier. But underneath the relief was a thin layer of guilt, that I couldn't quite shake. Had I been needlessly cruel during our last conversation? Had I caused him more pain than was necessary to establish my boundaries? Damien appeared beside me, sliding his arm around my waist as we both watched Sawyer disappear into the elevator. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, searching my face for any sign of distress. "Yes," I answered, and I was surprised to realize I meant it completely. "I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. This is what needed to happen." Damien smiled, warm and genuine, and kissed my forehead tenderly. "Good. Because I want to take you somewhere special tonight. I've made reservations at that beachside restaurant where we had our first date, the one where you spilled wine on the tablecloth and were mortified until I told you it made the evening more memorable. That evening turned out to be more magical than I could have imagined. The restaurant was exactly as I remembered, soft candlelight reflecting off the windows, the sound of waves creating a soothing backdrop, and the same waiter who'd served us 2 years ago welcoming us back with recognition. Damien had requested our original table, the one tucked into the corner with the best ocean view, and the attention to detail made my heart swell with affection. After we'd finished our appetizers and were waiting for the main course, Damien reached across the table and took both of my hands in his. His expression was serious but tender, and I could see emotion shimmering in his dark eyes. "Callum, these past few weeks have been challenging for both of us. Having your past show up unexpectedly, dealing with complicated emotions, navigating difficult conversations. It hasn't been easy." He squeezed my hands gently. "But going through all of that made me realize something important. What matters most isn't that life is perfect, or that we never face obstacles. What matters is that we face everything together, that we choose each other every single day regardless of what complications arise." My eyes filled with tears that I tried unsuccessfully to blink away. "Damien, I'm so sorry you had to go through any of this because of my history. You deserved better than—" "Stop," he interrupted gently but firmly. "You have nothing to apologize for. Everyone has a past. What happened before we met doesn't diminish what we have now. If anything, seeing how you handled everything, your strength, your integrity, your commitment to us, it just made me love you more." He released one of my hands and reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box that made my breath catch in my throat. "Wait, we're already married." "What?" Damien's smile was soft and slightly sheepish. "I know, but I never actually proposed to you properly. We got married at City Hall quickly because of visa issues, remember? It was practical and necessary, but not romantic. So I'm fixing that now." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, white gold with small diamonds set in an intricate pattern that caught the candlelight beautifully. "Callum, will you marry me? Again? Will you let me spend every day for the rest of our lives proving that I'm worthy of the love you give me?" I couldn't stop the tears anymore. They rolled down my cheeks as I laughed, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of this gesture, by how deeply Damien understood what I needed, even when I didn't know myself. "Yes. Always yes. Forever yes." He slid the ring onto my finger beside my existing wedding band, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made specifically for me. Then he stood, pulled me to my feet, and kissed me deep and passionate and full of promises for our future. Other diners applauded softly, making us both laugh against each other's lips. In that perfect moment, with the ocean waves behind us and Damien's arms around me, Sawyer finally disappeared completely from my thoughts. This was my real life. This love, this partnership, this man who understood that romance wasn't just about grand gestures but about showing up consistently, day after day, through complications and challenges. This was what I'd been searching for all along without realizing it. 6 months passed like a gentle dream, filled with quiet happiness and the kind of stability I'd once thought was impossible for me. Damien and I fell into comfortable rhythms, morning coffee together before he left for work, evening walks along the waterfront, weekend adventures exploring new restaurants or hiking trails. The gallery where I worked as a curator hosted 3 successful exhibitions, and Damien's company landed several major contracts that he'd been pursuing for years. Life felt balanced and full in ways that satisfied something deep in my soul. On a peaceful Saturday afternoon, I was sitting alone in my favorite corner cafe, a cozy place with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local artwork, absorbed in a fantasy novel I'd been trying to finish for weeks. The autumn sunlight streamed through the large windows, warming my table and making the whole space feel golden and safe. I was so engrossed in the story that I didn't notice someone approaching until they spoke my name. Callum? I looked up, and for a split second my body tensed defensively, but then I actually saw Sawyer and realized immediately that something fundamental had changed. He was smiling, truly smiling in a way that reached his eyes and made him look lighter somehow. Unburdened, and he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, fingers interlaced with Sawyer's, was another man with kind eyes and an open, friendly expression. Sawyer. I smiled back, surprised by how genuine the expression felt. How uncomplicated. How have you been? Really good, actually. Better than I've been in years. He gestured to his companion with obvious affection and pride. This is Cole. He's my boyfriend. Cole, this is Callum. Someone very important from my past. Cole extended his free hand with a warm smile that created crinkles around his eyes. It's wonderful to meet you. Sawyer's told me quite a bit about you. I stood and shook both their hands, noting how comfortable they seemed together, how Cole's presence seemed to ground Sawyer in a way I'd never managed to. It's great to meet you too. Would you like to sit for a minute? They pulled up chairs, and for the first time since our painful history began, conversation with Sawyer felt natural instead of loaded with tension. Cole worked as a therapist specializing in anxiety disorders, and he spoke passionately about his work helping veterans readjust to civilian life. Sawyer had apparently started a new position at a tech startup, leading a team developing educational software for children with learning disabilities. After we talked for a while about their work and my gallery projects, Sawyer's expression shifted to something more serious and vulnerable. He glanced at Cole, who squeezed his hand encouragingly, then looked back at me. Callum, I need to thank you for something. I know that sounds strange after everything, but it's true. I set down my coffee cup, genuinely curious. Thank me? For what exactly? For showing me the truth about myself, even though it hurt to see it. Sawyer's voice was steady but filled with emotion. After that night at your apartment, after you sent me away, I hit rock bottom. I'd been so focused on trying to win you back that I'd completely lost sight of who I was or what I actually needed. Your rejection, as painful as it was, forced me to finally look at myself honestly. He paused, gathering his thoughts while Cole rubbed supportive circles on the back of his hand. I started therapy, real intensive therapy, where I had to confront why I'd run away from you, why I'd sabotaged the best relationship I'd ever had. Turned out I had some serious attachment issues stemming from my childhood that I'd never addressed. Working through all of that was brutal, but necessary. I felt my chest tighten with unexpected emotion. I'm glad you got help, Sawyer. Truly, you deserve to heal just as much as I did. That's when I met Cole, actually. He was facilitating a support group I'd joined for people dealing with relationship anxiety. He wasn't my therapist. That would have been unethical, but we connected outside the group setting. Sawyer smiled at Cole with such tenderness that I felt genuinely happy for them. He taught me that love isn't about possession or grand gestures or trying to recapture something that's gone. It's about showing up consistently, doing the work, being present even when it's uncomfortable. Cole spoke up, his voice gentle but firm. Sawyer's done incredible work on himself. The man sitting here now is completely different from the person who started therapy 6 months ago. I'm proud of him. You should be, I agreed, meaning it completely. Growth like that takes real courage. Sawyer's eyes glistened slightly as he continued. You taught me something crucial, Callum, even though you probably didn't realize it at the time. You showed me that love has to be earned, that it requires more than just feeling strongly about someone. It requires respect and commitment, and the willingness to choose someone even when you're scared. So thank you for not taking me back, for holding your boundaries, for valuing yourself enough to demand better. That rejection saved my life. In a way, my throat felt tight with emotion. I'd spent months worrying that I'd been too harsh, too cold, too unforgiving. But hearing Sawyer explain how that pain had catalyzed genuine transformation shifted something in my understanding of what had happened between us. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is refuse to enable their unhealthy patterns, even when it feels cruel in the moment. I'm genuinely happy for you both, I said, and every word was true. You seem really good together. We talked for a while longer about lighter topics. Their recent trip to Portland, my upcoming gallery opening, Cole's terrible attempts at cooking that resulted in frequent takeout orders. When they finally stood to leave, Sawyer hesitated one more time. Damien is incredibly lucky to have you. I hope you're getting everything you deserve, Callum. Everything I couldn't give you back then. I smiled, thinking of Damien and the beautiful life we'd built together. I am. I promise you, I really am. After they left, I sat back down with my book, but I couldn't focus on reading. Instead, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in 4 years. The broken college student I'd been seemed like a different person entirely. Someone I could barely recognize when I looked back. That version of me had been consumed by heartbreak, convinced that Sawyer's rejection meant something fundamental was wrong with me. But I'd healed. I'd grown. I'd learned that my worth wasn't dependent on someone else's ability to see it. And I'd found love with someone who showed me every day what commitment actually looked like. My phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Leaving work early. Dinner plans? Missing you already. I typed back quickly. Warmth spreading through my chest. Can't wait. I love you more than coffee, and you know that's saying something. His response was immediate. Marry me again? I laughed out loud, earning curious looks from nearby cafe patrons. You literally just proposed 6 months ago. But yes, obviously, every day yes. Closing my book and gathering my things, I stepped out of the cafe into the golden afternoon sunlight. The autumn air was crisp and clean, filled with the smell of fallen leaves and possibility. Life was good, genuinely, uncomplicated good. My past had finally become just that, past, not forgotten, because those experiences had shaped who I'd become, but no longer holding power over my present or future. As I walked home to the apartment I shared with Damien, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. The heartbreak I'd survived, the healing I'd fought for, the love I'd found, all of it had been necessary to become the person I was now. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning, bright and full of promise, stretching out before me like an open road waiting to be explored. And I couldn't wait to see where it would lead.